Guys, we made it to summer. We're here. And all the parents said, please, for the love of God, let my kids do something apart from drive me crazy. Hey, speaking of parenting, anybody grow up here with parents who really tried to raise you to be self-reliant? Anybody? How about, did anybody here have parents who said, look, if you put your mind to something, you can do anything? Anybody? Just us millennials, I get it. That was me. That was my parents. I was like, Dad, but I'm not going to be 7-footer. So I can't be a center in the NBA, right? That's not going to be how it works here. And maybe some of us grew up in households where we were encouraged to be self-reliant. Encouraged. I'll never forget my mom. I love my mom, but she does not have one compassionate bone in her body. So I broke my foot fielding a ground ball as a kid, rolling over my ankle, and broke my foot. And she did not say, I'll grab some ice. She said, get your butt back out there, you're fine. She did come back and apologize later. But guys, we live in a self-reliant culture. We live in a world that prizes self-sufficiency, doesn't it? See, we're constantly told, believe in yourself. Hey, take control of your life. Have it figured out. We celebrate it. We've got, hey, these are the most successful people, and they did it before they were 30 years old. See, but what I want to show us today is what if Jesus invites us into something that's completely the opposite? What if today he's going to show us that what he marvels at is not our strength, our self-sufficiency, but something completely different? What if the kind of faith that Jesus marvels at is not strong or polished or self-assured, but what if it's desperate? What if it's dependent? What if it's this sort of faith you're saying, I got nothing left in the tank, God? What if it's this sort of faith that is honest and raw and authentic, and it has no leverage to play in order to get something from God, but actually just goes to God and says, I got nothing here. I need to deeply trust you in your goodness and in your authority. And what I think Jesus is doing here in Matthew 8 is we're going to see him meet a Roman centurion. This man has rank. He's someone who has authority over other people, a man with power. And yet, what makes Jesus marvel is not that he's the best of the best when it comes to leading his team. What makes Jesus marvel is not, oh my gosh, you've got so many people underneath you. What makes him marvel is the centurion saw something in Jesus that most of Israel missed, and if we're being honest, most of people miss today. That is a divine authority wrapped in compassion that the God of the universe would care enough to heal a servant. See, today, I want to ask this question. Is that the kind of faith that you and I have? Like, when we talk about faith, we talk about like, okay, I trust God, right? We just sung it. It's a great song. Zach did a great job. The team does a great job leading it. But like, what does that mean? What does like really placing my faith in Jesus look like? Because today, we're rewarded for how well and how strong we are. We're rewarded for our personal strength. And from a young age, we're actually told not to show our weaknesses, right? Not to show our weaknesses. But what Jesus does is he honors a Roman soldier not for his rank or resume. He honors a Roman soldier because of his desperation and dependence upon him. See, here's the good news. Because our tension is, how do I live my life? My entire life has been self-reliant, self-dependence, go-getter, you go, right? And Jesus, on the other end, being like, no, opposite. You don't need that. You need me. Like, you can't do that. If you're going to completely rely upon yourself and forget about me, we've completely dropped the plot. But here's the good news. Jesus doesn't ask us for impressive faith. Not once in the New Testament, not once when Jesus is like, you know what? Gosh, that's so well put together. That's buttoned up. I bet you wear a suit to church on Sunday. Sort of faith. No. He looks for real, authentic faith that comes empty-handed, that is a willingness to trust his authority and rest in his compassion. And where we've been, right, if you've been with us for a certain amount of time, we've been in Matthew 5-7, which is the greatest sermon ever preached, and it was not done by me. You got a little bit too much enjoyment from that, Mike. But what we've seen is on the Sermon on the Mount is Jesus continues to invite people into his presence. He continues to take the outcast of society and invite them to trust and treasure him. He invites all of us to experience his grace. Kyle did a great job last week as we transitioned from Matthew 7 into Matthew 8, talking about the healing of a leper. And what Jesus is starting to do is he's starting to reveal his authority to the masses. Slowly but surely, he's starting to say, oh, no. I'm the king. I have authority over all things. And this week, what we're going to see is God is going to do a work in the life of the centurion and his servant. And in doing so, he's going to show us what this real, authentic faith is that he marvels at. Because here's the thing, in this text, Jesus only marvels twice in the New Testament. Lots of people marvel towards Jesus. Holy cow, look at these works that you're doing. But Jesus actually only marvels twice. And this is the only spot in the New Testament where he does it in a positive way. The other place he marvels is his hometown in Nazareth. And he marvels at their lack of faith. So if that's the case, I don't know about you, I would love to have a faith worth marveling. But if I'm being honest, that is not my life most of the time. My big idea for us this morning is this: a faith that marvels. Faith is a desperate and dependent reliance upon Jesus, his authority and compassion produce in us a faith worth marveling. I'll read it again. Faith is a desperate and dependent reliance upon Jesus. His authority and compassion produce in us a faith worth marveling. Read with me in your copy of God's word. Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 5. When he had entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him, appealing to him, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And he said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion replied, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority with soldiers under me, and I say to one, go, and he goes, and I say to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, truly, I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. While the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness, in that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And the centurion, Jesus said, go, let it be done for you as you have believed. And the servant was healed in that very moment. This is the word of the Lord. Would you pray with me? Father, I pray for us this morning. that you would reveal to us what a marveling faith looks like. A faith that would transform our lives, a faith that would be so rooted to you that you would produce in us something that we cannot do on our own. Something that's not self-reliant, something that's not pull up your bootstraps, something that is placing all of our weight upon you. It's in Jesus' name we pray, amen. So we're going to see here, when we start out, as Jesus starts with these dimensions of a marveling faith. He reads by saying this, when he had entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him, appealing to him, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And he said to him, I will come and heal him. But the centurion replied, Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and another, come, and he comes. And my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he marveled and said to those who followed him, truly I tell you, no one in Israel have I found such faith. So what Jesus is doing here is he's revealing to us. We're diving in. We're looking at the centurion. What made his faith marveling? There are a few things that I found. He appeals to Jesus. He starts out by appealing to Jesus. He's begging. That's literally the word here. He's begging for Jesus to heal him. He's trusting. He's saying, okay, like I know that no one else can heal my servant, but you can. Now, Roman kingdom, right? You guys have seen the movie 300. I'm kidding. But I want you to notice something here that's not common. He has compassion for his servant. Compassion. That's not common in Roman culture. What do? Servant's paralyzed? See you, dude. I'm going to get a new one. I've got people all over me. I'm good. Tile up to the king. Hey, I need a new servant. Great. How many you need? One? Great. Swap. Normal. That's not what the centurion says. The centurion has compassion for the lowly. And that's going to be a theme that we see throughout the second half of the book of Matthew. Jesus looks at those on the inside. And he says, you think you've had it all figured out, but really, I'm going to show my compassion on those who are far from me. And what the centurion does here is he has compassion for his servant. When it goes completely against everything else that the Roman culture would have thought. It's easy to fire the servant. Look, you're paralyzed. You offer me nothing. But he doesn't do that. We see centurion has respect. He has respect for the king and the king's authority. Do you guys notice the language that he's using towards Jesus? Hey, I'm a man who has great authority. I've got people underneath me. He's not saying that to be like, Jesus, look how awesome I am. He's saying that to say, no. I actually know what it's like to be in your shoes. I know what it's like to have people under me. I know what it's like to tell people, hey, do this for me, or do this, or hey, I need you to do this. So much so that he's equating that in the Roman hierarchy to saying, Jesus, you do far more in the spiritual realm. The centurion has this respect for Jesus and his authority. So much so, the centurion says, Jesus, you don't even need to leave where you're standing to heal my servant. That's faith. That is faith. Because he believed. He believed Jesus, who was interacting with him at the moment, could in that moment not walk all the way back to his home to heal, but that right there he could heal. Talk about belief. There's no modern medicine. There's no hospital that we're taking him to. This was a real, desperate belief. Jesus said, if you can't heal him, no one else can heal him. Nobody. But he believed. He trusted the king. He believed that Jesus was the king. He did not, obviously, have the full picture of what Jesus would do, but it's pretty clear that he thought Jesus was the king. Now, John Webster uses this language that I love. Faith is the human response to the self-giving of God. It is a movement of trust, obedience, and love awakened by God's own address. See, faith for us is understanding when God comes into our lives, when he comes into the picture, I am responding to this selfless, life-giving love of God that we have never seen before. Never. Do you guys understand? Think about this for a second. Everything in our life is transactional. Everything. Except for what? The grace of God. The grace of God moves from a transactional relationship with Jesus into a transformational, let me open your eyes to see the goodness of God. It's a movement of trust, obedience, and love awakened by seeing the God of love. Now, most of you know that I'm not a small human being, right? So our girls dance down in Cameron Park every week. And I had been sitting on these chairs. Now, I thought they were pretty sturdy. They're these plastic chairs, right? Well, I get in there one day, and it's been a long day, so me, being the big guy, I'm trying to get comfortable, and I kind of slouch back, and this plastic chair just crumbles to the ground, and I go with it. I don't know what was better, the laughing coming from my daughters or watching the ghost white face of the owner of the shop be like, are you okay? But also, how did you do that? See, what ended up happening was I said, okay, I'm not sitting in these sorts of chairs anymore, right? Thankfully, there is a bench that is thick wood with metal poles that run to the bottom of it for people like me. And so I don't know about you, but I thought, hey, you know what? I'm not very smart, but I'm not gonna sit in these plastic chairs anymore because they cannot hold my weight. I'm gonna go sit on this bench that I know, boy, I better go work out with my F3 buddies if I'm breaking this thing. See, I turned from my faith, being in the chair that would hold me, to the bench that would actually do it. Faith is trust. It's not just intellect. We like to say it's the head and the heart working and being molded to God. It's not just knowing that God can save us. Yes, we hear Bible stories all the time. Some of us grew up in church. Yes, I know Jesus can save me. But friends, faith involves action. A turning of the whole person to God, a turning from, oh, my faith is in the chair that will crumble into the bench that will hold me. That's faith. See, faith rests on the object's reliability, not the subject of the weight. Thankfully, faith doesn't rest on me saying, I gotta lose some weight. I gotta get myself figured out before I can go to God. No, that's not how the gospel works. Faith is saying, me in my mess, Jesus, I'm going to place my weight upon you and I know you will hold me. And I know that I will be able to experience your love and your grace. But notice, the faith of the centurion looked completely different from the faith of the Jewish people. Read with me. I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at the table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness. In the place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now, this is some interesting language here. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is referring to the banquet feast in heaven, that we will sit around a table together. The God of the universe, when we come into his presence, says, no, you're at the family table today. You get to sit at the big boy table. See, what we see here, the sons of the kingdom, which we're talking about here, will be thrown into the outer darkness. That's talking about historically the Jewish people. The Jewish people who have said, okay, I'm going to place my faith in my tradition, not in the Messiah. And I think it's something important for us to realize. The people of Israel think they are in because of honor and heritage in the text. Again, I want to clear here. Let me just pause for a second because I think this will be helpful. We are not talking about the state of Israel and what's going on in the Middle East. We're talking about historically in the Old Testament, the people of God and people who would say, I follow Yahweh. You with me? Great. What we see here is a different faith. Jesus reveals and saying a lackluster faith is one that says, I'm going to place my faith in honor. Sharing the banquet table with the patriarchs would be viewed as the highest honor you could possibly have. Not communing with Jesus, but let me commune with Moses, Isaac, and Jacob. It's the highest honor. And they think they're in because of their heritage. They were the people of God of the Old Testament. They heard stories of God sparing their families. They heard stories of God leading them out of slavery, showing grace upon them by passing over their sins. See, friends, this is a different sort of faith. This is the insider sort of faith. The ones who have been walking with God for years, but not actually knowing him. The ones who know a lot about God, but don't actually have a relationship with him. The ones who say, my dad, my grandpa, my great-grandpa, all of them, yes, we're the people of God. But what they miss is they miss a faith that rests solely on the God of the universe, rather than a faith for them that rests only on tradition. See, these are the people that we read in Matthew 7, whom Jesus never knew. Friends, they knew a lot about God. They didn't know him. They didn't have a relationship with him. They didn't love him. They loved what he could give them. See, they had every opportunity to know Jesus, but they didn't. The mirror in Matthew 7, when he says, depart from me, for I never knew you, their faith was based upon what Jesus could do and what they could do by using the power that Jesus has to accomplish instead of resting in the presence of God. It's a different sort of faith. Now, one of Katie and I's dreams, which I tell her probably isn't going to happen until glory, but is we'd love to vacation someday in Maine. In the summer, you guys know I hate the snow, so it has to be in the summer. See, we're fascinated by the old streets. We love food, lobsters for days. Sounds incredible. And checking out the incredible scenery. One of the things Maine is known for is what? Lighthouses. One day, there's a man who, and I don't know how familiar you are with lighthouses, but I know a lot more now. People who tend to these lighthouses, what they do is they pass them down generation to generation. That's what they do. They say, okay, I'm going to bring my kid in. I'm going to teach them what they need to do. And they take care of the lighthouse, and then they pass it down to the next generation. So you have like generation after generation after generation who are lighthouse people. These people don't just wear flannel and Carhartt because it's a hipster thing to do, but because it actually helps them. Well, the story of one lighthouse that slowly over time the flame grew dim. See, they stopped cleaning the lens. They stopped ringing the bell when the storms came. They still gathered for their meetings and to sing the old songs together as a family. But they had no desire to light the way. And one night, a storm starts to roll in. And there was a boat that was close to the harbor. And they couldn't see. But this young sailor, who had no idea about the coast or anything like that, he didn't see the light, but he remembered stories of there being a light that would shine. He was like, man, I know there's supposed to be a light here. And what happened is miles away, not at the lighthouse, this man sees the storm and says, I'm going to gather as much wood as I possibly can, and lights this fire on the edge of a cliff. Lights this fire. Not by tradition, but actually lights this fire. And what he does is he creates his own lighthouse for the boat to safely arrive at shore. And the original keepers, they had never even noticed the rescue because they were still arguing about how the flame used to burn brighter. Friends, the problem with the lighthouse keeper was the same problem with the Jewish people. They forgot their original purpose. Doesn't matter if you grew up in church or didn't grow up in church. Doesn't matter if you've got 1 million Bible verses memorized or not. What Jesus says is that we are not to assume faith because of anything else except for us placing our faith in who the God of the universe is and him inviting us into his presence, where we can experience him as both Savior and King and friend. See, each person individually has to place their faith in the God of the universe because we have experienced God's faithfulness to us. Isn't that beautiful? Think about that for a second. We've got people in this room who grew up in the church. We've got people in this room from different backgrounds of religion. We've got people in this room who didn't grow up in the church. And yet God is so faithful to welcome us all in as a part of the family of God. That we could experience his love together. See, faith is not about the traditions, even though the traditions, and hear me, can be great teachers. They can be. It's the whole point of the Old Testament, to point us to Jesus. Tradition is a beautiful thing so long as it points us to Jesus. Because a marveling faith rests completely on who the God of the universe is, and the faith that transforms us by believing in this God of the universe. Read with me. So you may be asking, well, okay, what is a faith that transforms? Well, Jesus shows us. And to the centurion, Jesus said, go, let it be done for you as you have believed. And the servant was healed in that very moment. Now, I do want to address something before we really start rolling here. It's important to understand that the centurion's faith was not the cause of the healing. Some people wrongly teach that if healing does not come, you didn't have enough faith. Friends, that is not the God of the universe. It's not what he teaches us. And that's not what this text is saying. God does work through our faith, right? He does. But the God of the universe is never controlled by it. Tracking with me? The belief that a lack of healing is always due to a lack of faith actually echoes Job's friends in the Old Testament when Job has incredible problems in his life and Job is trying to stay faithful and his friends are like, bro, you're a big screw up if all this is happening to you. It's not true. It's not true. Job had real faith and God did not heal. No. What's happening in this passage is not that Jesus is rewarding faith with healing like it's a transaction. Remember, we talked about the difference between transactional living and transformational living. Instead, in this most beautiful transformational way, Jesus is revealing his glory through the centurion's trust in him. The moment is not about the strength of the man's faith, but about the greatness of Jesus and the compassion that God has towards outsiders. Think about that for a second. He's compassionate. Jesus, from what we know, Jesus has never met this servant before. This servant and this centurion have never done anything for Jesus. But what does he do? He shows him compassion. Whew. See, this Jesus is the centrality of faith. Jesus shows his power that he is divinely God and perfectly man. He is fully God and fully human. Did you notice what the text was saying here? Jesus heals the centurion's servant in that very moment. As he's having the conversation, he says, go back, your servant's gonna be healed. Think about that for a second. Jesus being fully God means that he was still able to heal the man without having to move anywhere. This was not common. No one was able to do this. And you may wonder, hey, how does he do this? Can't wait to ask God in heaven. He is fully human. And the answer is yes. But the helpful way to talk about this is simply this. This is what, again, tradition is a great teacher. Tradition is not God. You with me? The way tradition has talked about this is the finite cannot hold the infinite. So, Jesus, being fully human, was not bound by being fully human and yet still fully God. Jesus, in the bigness of being fully God, heals a servant who is not in his presence because the finiteness of flesh and blood cannot hold the infiniteness of God. Tracking with me? Friends, this is what the text is about. This is about the God who loves, the God who heals, the God who is over all things. Think about that. He does what he does in the fullness of his humanity and the fullness of his deity because he loves. See, what faith is trusting there's only one who can heal. There's only one that we can experience the fullness of the depth of his love. And friends, only one who can save us, and only one who can transform our lives. See, anybody else afraid of heights in here? I'm a big teddy bear, so I am deathly afraid of heights, okay? And I don't know about you, but I used to climb trees, and I was like, dude, I got like 2 branches up, and I'm like, I'm good now. But there's a boy who was in our neighborhood, and he just climbed too high up this tree. He just climbed too high up this tree. And so me being the oldest, I'm like sprinting to his parents' house to try and be like, he can't get down, right? I'm like crying, I'm a kid. Probably too old to cry, but that's besides the point. And his dad comes out. And his dad comes to the base of this tree and he goes, hey, just jump, dude, just jump. Okay? And he's like, Dad, I can't jump. He's like, I will catch you. He jumps. The dad catches him, no broken bones. But what happened in this moment is the son grasped, like he hugged his dad so tight in that moment because he thought for sure he was a goner. He was never coming down from this tree. We got to call the fire department. But the boy knew his dad would catch him. Friends, faith is not about forcing belief to get something from Jesus. Faith is jumping out of the tree knowing only he can catch us. John Owen says it this way: faith is beholding the glory of Christ in the glass of the gospel. The gospel is the mirror or window in which we, through our faith, see Jesus. We don't see him physically today, but when every moment in our life, when we're met with struggles in our life, when we jump off the tree and he catches us, friends, that's time after time after time saying, okay, I trust you more than anything else. And all of the difficult moments in our life, do we understand, are moments where we climb ourselves too high up the tree and you're like, oh boy, I can't get out of this thing. But every single time, the grace of God is sitting for us at the bottom, saying, I will catch you. Friends, a vibrant, living faith engages with the gospel, participates in the community of believers, and seeks to faithfully reflect the light of Jesus to our world. Because I don't know about you, but I want my friends to experience that sort of grace. I want them to experience that sort of love. That the God of the universe would be there to catch them when they fall. Today, Jesus offers us more than an idea about him. He offers us himself. Faith is personal, and it's an invitation to trust the God of the universe who says, I've got you. I'm going to close with a few implications. Friends, faith is not inherited, it's encountered. It's not. I don't know about you, but there's nothing more than I want for my kids to not just do the dishes, but I want them to trust and treasure Jesus. And here's the thing. I can put them in the best church services, which is, probably not, when I'm not preaching. Sorry, Charlie. I can send them to camps all summer. I can send them to base camp. But what needs to happen more than anything else is for the God of the universe to have an impactful life in my kids' lives. It's the only way they're going to know Jesus. The way that Tim Keller describes it is, I can position them under the faucet to get water. I can turn everything on, but until the Spirit allows the water to flow out of it into them, friends, we can do nothing. See, it's not about an inheritance that I give to them. It's about trying to get them to experience the God of the universe. And how about you? That's why faith in my life and my hope for my kids is a desperate and dependent plea on God to do a work that I can't do. It is. I cannot do things apart from God. And friends, it's okay, even, I argue, necessary to come to Jesus in our weakness. That's where real faith grows. But the problem is, we keep climbing the tree. And we think, I'm just going to climb. I'll be fine. I've got it on my own. Self-reliance, self-dependence. I can do this. I don't need anybody to catch me until the branch breaks. And then we go, oh boy, I need somebody to come save me. See, faith is a response to authority with trust. It's saying to the God of the universe, okay, I've seen your authority. I've seen you work. I know who you are. I'm going to place my trust in you. I'm going to move from the chair that crumbles into the bench that will hold firm. See, our faith deepens when we see Jesus not just as a pimp who can give us what we want, but as the King who commands heaven and earth and invites us into a relationship with him. He cares about us. Think about that. The God of the universe would care about us. That he would love us. Because what faith does is it always leads to a transformation. Real, authentic faith is not transactional, guys. It's not. Jesus doesn't come to us and say, okay, you want to place your faith in me? Great. You got to do this first. You got to get better first. Hey, you know what? If only you didn't yell at your kids, then you can come to me. If only you were just a little bit kinder, then you can come to me. No! Jesus takes the broken and the lowly and he says, come to me. Because my relationship with you will completely transform you. Things are going to happen in your life when you place your faith in me, is what Jesus tells us, that nothing else could do. This is the God of the universe. This is the plea that he's saying, hey, trust me. I have all authority. Trust me, and I will change your life. Not because we go to God with anything except for our brokenness. And faith, friends, is time and time and time again going to the God of the universe with our brokenness, not our strength. He's not impressed. He's not. But what he does love to do is transform our lives. friend or a spouse and we say, holy cow, I was actually kind when I have never been kind to that moment in my life, we would look at God and say, this is your work in me. It's not me. That you would be radically hospitable is not something we in Placerville do. It's the opposite. But that we would look at God and say, God, this is your